What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about 5 players I'd be looking to sell in Dynasty Fantasy Football before the NFL Draft. I think we're in this really interesting time period where we've gotten through free agency. We're still like a week and a half away from the NFL Draft, but if you're someone who's really dialed in, you can kind of start to predict what these teams are going to do come draft night. And you kind of get this edge where you can figure out what players, what positions you can move off of before they lose a lot of value, come next Thursday. So that's what we're focused on today. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Would love to hear your thoughts down below. But starting off with the first player I'd be looking to sell, I have Chase Brown. Now, he's currently valued as the running back 17 on Keep Trade Cut, and he's coming off a very, very strong 2024 season. Heading into last year, he was in one of these ambiguous backfields where you had a potential committee between him and Zach Moss. There were arguments for both these guys heading into the season. The Bengals signed Zach Moss in free agency. He was coming off a solid season with the Colts, especially early on in the season with no Jonathan Taylor. He had more experience. He was the veteran option. But for Chase Brown, they didn't spend a high draft pick on a running back. They didn't pay a super big money free agent signing. And so there were arguments for both these guys to be the number one. You start off the season, Zach Moss is more of the lead back. Then Chase Brown just starts to get, more and more opportunities. Then you have Zach Moss go down for the season with a neck injury. And that's when Chase Brown steps in and is just an absolute monster. In 8 games without Zach Moss, the dude averaged 20.6 PPR points per game. He was averaging 18.9 carries and 5.5 targets per game. So I totally understand the appeal for Chase Brown, where he survived free agency. If he can now survive the NFL draft, he's looking like an absolute stud for fantasy heading into 2025. I think some things we have to remember here with Chase Brown, though, is that he was a 5th-round pick in 2023, and he's also kind of like an older prospect just given the year he was drafted, where he's 25 years old. And these day 3 undrafted running back picks, or, potential not picks in the undrafted guy's case, they have consistently struggled to retain these running back 1 roles, even if they come out hot and produce really well in the first couple years in the NFL. You have guys like James Robinson, Elijah Mitchell, Tyler Algier. These are all players where the team, got them either undrafted or with late round picks. They produced extremely well early on, and the team has still went out and brought in top competition for them. For James Robinson, the very next year, they draft Travis Etienne in round 1. If a round 1 pick had given you the production that James Robinson did in his rookie year, there is no chance that team is spending a round 1 pick on the same position the next year. For Elijah Mitchell, I understand injuries, kind of were a factor here, but a couple years after his big rookie season, they bring in potentially the best running back in the NFL in Christian McCaffrey. Now all of a sudden, he's like a handcuff at best. Tyler Algier, day 3 pick, really strong rookie season. I believe he rushed for 1,000 yards. If not, he was very, very close. The very next season, they are spending elite round 1 draft capital on Bijan Robinson. You even have examples of guys like Isaiah Pacheco, Dameon Pierce, Myles Gaskin, who, were very productive early on in their careers, and the teams didn't even really bring in the super high level competition, and they still kind of flopped moving forward. So you don't even have to, disappoint because there's another stud coming in. Your production could kind of just tail off. And there are just so many examples of guys like that. You throw in a Phillip Lindsay, who was super productive his first couple of seasons, then just gets tossed to the curb. It's just not a great grouping of players that I want to be holding on to and trying to trade for in Dynasty. But you look at Chase Brown here, he did survive free agency for sure. The only running back they brought in was Samaje Perine, but I am very, very concerned about this upcoming draft here. The Bengals have had top 30 visits with Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and Caleb Johnson. Now, there have been reports that the Bengals are very focused on defense heading into this draft, but I also don't think it's a coincidence that, they're spending these top 30 picks. You only get 30 of them on guys like Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson. These are not running backs that are going to be day 3, late round picks. They're not meeting with these guys for no reason. So I do think they're going to be in play for a day 2 running back. They have the 49th pick, obviously in round 2, and then they have the 81st pick in round 3. So I think they're going to be considering the running back position for both of those picks. It's all about the risk reward here with Chase Brown. It's very possible that the Bengals go into the draft, they don't get the running back that they want in round 2, round 3. Maybe they don't pick a running back. Maybe they pick one in the later rounds that you're not super scared of. And in that case, his value probably does go up, right? He's surviving at least another season without legit competition. But I promise you, if the Bengals go out and draft Quinshon Judkins in round 2, Caleb Johnson in round 3, Chase Brown's value is going to absolutely free fall in Dynasty. And so I'd be looking to get off of him. I understand there's some reward here where if he survives the draft, he'll be fine. It's just not a risk that I'm willing to take here. I think the boost he gets is not even comparable to, the tanking of his value that would happen if they did go after one of those day 2 guys. So I would just be firing off offers. I had like one Chase Brown share in Dynasty heading into this past week. You really just need one league mate to be high on him, right? There are going to be people who are equally as concerned about the draft and don't want to trade for him. I just moved him in one of my leagues for Rome Odunze. Now, I don't think that's a trade that's going to go through in the majority of leagues because I think most people are going to be higher on Rome Odunze, but you just have to fire off those offers. So some targets I'd be looking at, if we're looking at rookie picks, I think like the 109 or earlier would be values I'm good with. Like I wouldn't hate like the 110, but I would definitely start off with like those top 9 rookie picks. I think you throw out an offer for a CMC, a win now piece who's older, has injury concerns, but I would take CMC. The wide receivers, Odunze, Worthy, Moore, Olave. You could also talk me into guys like Addison, Devonta Smith, guys in that range. So I would just be firing off targets to pretty much every league mate because it just takes one dude who isn't concerned about the draft, sees what he did towards the end of last year, and is just all in like I found in my league by getting Rome Odunze. So that's going to be the first player I'd be looking to move off of. The second one is actually going to be the only wide receiver here, and that is Jeudy. So he's currently valued as the wide receiver 40 on Keep Trade Cut. I really don't think that's an egregious ranking. Like that's pretty in line with where I'd have him right now for Dynasty. I just think he's in a very weird spot as a Dynasty asset where he's not like super old, but he's not super young. He's going to be turning 26 in about 10 days, at least the time that I'm recording this video. As of right now, he's not quite a win now piece, and he's also not a super smooth fit on a rebuilding roster because if you're in a win now spot, like you want someone who's in a very favorable situation, can give you strong production in 2025. I don't think that's Jeudy. If you're a rebuilding piece, you're fine with guys who aren't in great situations if they're not giving you, top production for the next year or two. But then when Jeudy is going to be ready, when that team's window is kind of emerging, he's going to be 27, 28, 29, which doesn't match up well, right, age-wise for that rebuilding team that like should be peaking at that point. So I just think he's kind of an odd fit in Dynasty. You look at his production last year, very good season. He was the wide receiver 21 in points per game. He also has a wide receiver 19 season in 2022. So I think in the right situations, like Jeudy could definitely be a top 24 guy pretty consistently. The problem is just his current situation. And then you look at his splits last year, he was a monster with Jameis Winston, and he was very rough without Jameis Winston. In 7 games with Winston, he averaged 21.1 PPR points per game. Like, that is high-end wide receiver 1 production. So it is in there. Without Jameis Winston, he was at under 10 points per game at 9.3. That is pretty much unplayable for fantasy. When you dig into the Browns, potential draft outlook this year, they have the number 2 pick. They are currently minus 330 to draft Travis Hunter. So it seems very likely at this point that they're going to be adding Travis Hunter with their first pick. They're not going to be going quarterback. And not only are they not bringing in a quarterback, they are bringing in like potential competition here for Jeudy. I am very high on Travis Hunter as a player. I think he's going to get a real shot at wide receiver, especially with, the reports we've gotten, what we've heard from their GM about how they view Travis Hunter. And so I think it's possible that Jeudy's heading into 2025 as the second best wide receiver on this offense. And then you look at the quarterback situation, it's a mess. Like you have Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett as the quarterback 1, quarterback 2. Like maybe you talk yourself into Joe Flacco because he had, some monster games. What was that, 2 years ago, before he went to the Colts, but he didn't really have the same effect on the Colts last year, especially later on in the season. I do think they're going to be in the mix for a quarterback in round 2, whether that's Shuck or Milrow. But Shuck, even though he's an older prospect, doesn't have a ton of starting experience. Jaylen Milrow, probably someone that you don't want to see, starting in the NFL right out of the gate. So I don't think those guys are solutions at the quarterback position. I just think it's going to be potentially like 2+ years before the Browns really get their quarterback situation figured out. And I just don't know if you want to be waiting around for Jeudy if you have him on a rebuilding team or if you have him on a win now team. I would just be looking to pivot. So he's still a very good player. I think he could still be productive, this season, but I just don't know if he's actually going to be like moving the needle in terms of wins. So some targets I'd be looking at. I would obviously take any first round pick this year for Jeudy. I'd also be looking at like early seconds, 201, 202. I think that's a pretty favorable spot to be drafting. Like you're going to have the option to potentially get like a Caleb Johnson, a Matthew Golden, maybe a Shadur Sanders. So there are going to be some interesting options at that 1-2 turn. I like that range. At wide receiver, I like a younger option like Josh Downs. Like I think their production could be pretty similar in the 2025 season. And then Josh Downs is just, I think, like 3 years younger than him. I like an older option, but more of a win now play, and a guy like Chris Godwin. At running back, I like Chuba Hubbard. Another wide receiver I'd throw in there is a guy like Brandon Ayuk. So those are some potential targets. I would just be considering moving on from Jeudy. Then we're going to get back to hammering the running back position here, and I want to talk about Tyrone Tracy. He's currently valued as the running back 24, and a lot of the points I made for Chase Brown are going to apply here for Tyrone Tracy. He was also a round 5 pick just a year later in 2024. Also a very old prospect where he's 25 years old, and he got the opportunity to be the running back 1 for 13 games last year. In those games, on a bad offense, he averaged 13.2 PPR points. So he produced very well. If you guaranteed he was going to be the running back 1 heading into next year, like I'd feel pretty good about him. The issue is that the Giants seem to be heavily in the market for a running back, and potentially on day 2. These have been the reported top 30 visits they've had with running backs: Amarion Hampton, Quinshawn Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Cam Scatterbo, and Ali Gordon. So, I mean, those are guys that could be going anywhere from round 1 through like round 4, round 5 when we're talking about Ali Gordon. And the Giants do just have a decent number of picks in this range, where they have a very early round 2 pick at pick 34. They have an early round 3 pick 65. They have a late round 3 pick 99. And then they have an early 4th rounder with pick 105. So like that round 2 pick, that could be considering a Quinshawn Judkins. Early round 3 could be looking at a Caleb Johnson. Late round 3 could be looking at a Cam Scatterbo. That 4th round pick, that could be an Ali Gordon. There are just going to be so many picks you're going to be sweating through if you do roster Tyrone Tracy. And so I'd prefer to pivot off of him. I do just think the Giants are going to take a running back in this draft. And then you're looking at his value, right? He's the running back 24 right now. As a day 3 pick, older prospect from last year, if they bring in someone in the first 3 rounds, I think that player might be valued, above Tyrone Tracy right out of the gate. So I'd be looking at picks like 203, 204 or better in return for Tyrone Tracy. I think we're kind of looking at similar targets as I talked about with Jeudy. I think Josh Downs is interesting. Chris Godwin. If we want to look at a quarterback, I think Justin Fields could be an interesting play. Not that I'm super in on Fields long term. I just think if he's getting the starting job here for the Jets, he's going to produce for fantasy. And I think his value is going to grow. I do think there are a lot of Justin Fields truthers out there. So even if he isn't playing at a super high level from a real life perspective, if he's putting up fantasy numbers, I think his value is just naturally going to go up throughout the 2025 season. So those are some targets. I would be trying to move off of him before they bring in competition. Then we have Najee Harris, who's actually valued right after Tyrone Tracy as the running back 25. And I just think his current value is really getting elevated by like his 1-year landing spot here with the Chargers. There is a path where the Chargers kind of just like punt the running back position again. Remember, they went in last year with their running back 1 and running back 2 as J.K. Dobbins coming off a ton of injury-riddled seasons. There was no guarantee he was going to look decent like he did. And then also Gus Edwards was like their running back 2. Like we were looking at Kamani Vidal as like a day 3 pick who could potentially take over the backfield. Obviously it didn't happen, but like those were the discussions with how weak that running back room was. So it's possible they don't spend another high pick on a running back and Najee just racks up a ton of volume and delivers like a solid running back 2 season. He's proven to be durable. He can handle a large workload. He's not going to be like a true difference maker at running back. He's not a super dynamic player. I don't think he's like amazing in one specific spot, but if you're just going to give him a ton of opportunities, he's going to be fine. The Chargers want to establish the run, and if he's getting that type of usage, he's probably going to hit in the touchdown department with Justin Herbert. I just think on a 1-year deal, he is very, very replaceable. I think the Chargers could be in the mix for a day 2 running back. I also think if they went running back in day 3, like I think that running back could have a real ability to eat into Najee's workload. I'm just not super high on Najee as the player, especially if he has real competition. The Chargers have draft picks in every single round. They also have 4 6th-round picks, which means they could, potentially use those to move up in certain spots, potentially on day 3. So I would rather just like re-roll on a mid-round 2 rookie pick if that's possible. I like some other win now options like an Alvin Kamara, Not sure you're going to be able to pull that off in certain leagues, but on Keep Trade Cut, for whatever reason, they're very similar in terms of their ranking. I think James Conner is interesting. He's a couple years older, but like if you're asking me, do I want James Conner in 2025 or Najee? I'm probably taking James Conner. Obviously, if Najee avoids the draft, that might be a different answer. This is also in the range where you have veteran quarterbacks like a Matthew Stafford, a Geno Smith. I'd take those guys, some wide receiver veteran options, Cortland Sutton, Juwan Jennings. I think both those guys are also very interesting. So just another running back where I think the draft could really hurt their upside as soon as this upcoming season. And then the last guy I have here is Jaylen Warren. And this kind of sucks because I actually really like Jaylen Warren as a player. He's the running back 32 on Keep Trade Cut. And personally, I thought he was way underutilized last year. The Steelers were pretty much just like feeding Najee Harris these inefficient touches. I think Jaylen Warren has and had way more juice than Najee. He's the way more efficient guy, and he's still a pretty physical runner, even though he's not the biggest dude. Like I think he's like 5'8", 205 to 210, but still very physical. He only had a 35% opportunity share last year. Now, he did re-sign with the Steelers on a one-year deal, and when you look at their current depth chart, like he's the clear-cut running back one, but I think they are going to be big-time players for a running back in this draft. They have had reported top 30 visits with Amarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Bashal Tutin, DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, Ollie Gordon, RJ Harvey, Jaden Blue. You are not meeting with that many running backs, pretty much like first-round picks to potential like round 6, round 7 picks if you are not interested in the running back position. And they could really take a running back at any point in this draft. I think also you look at Arthur Smith, it is clear that Arthur Smith is not high on Jaylen Warren, right? Like the Steelers were not all that high on Najee Harris. If they were, they would have picked up his 5th-year option. They would have made an effort to re-sign him this offseason, and they still had Jaylen Warren clearly behind Najee Harris. So if they go out, this current regime, Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator, if they get to go out and handpick their rookie running back, I think it's reasonable to believe that that guy might just have the leg up, heading into the 2025 season, and Warren might find himself in a pretty frustrating situation like he did last year. So some potential targets I'd be looking at, I think obviously anything like mid-round 2 or better would be an easy accept. I think when you're getting into like 208, 209, 210, those are still spots where I would take Jaylen Warren. In that range, you're still like in the mix for potential late day 2 running backs or like early day 3 running backs who have fun landing spots where you could see like an opportunity to earn a role right away. I would just capitalize on someone viewing Jaylen Warren as like the RB1 because you look at the depth chart, he's a fun player. It looks like he could be their clear-cut running back 1. I would just be shocked if he somehow survives the draft and has no like decent competition heading into next year. So those are going to be the 5 players I'd be selling on before the draft. We have Chase Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Tyrone Tracy, Najee Harris, and Jaylen Warren. Just trying to avoid them bringing in competition and have that value tank. But let me know your thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys in the next one.